Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Oh, Arsenal, is it even worth getting close if it's going to end in agony? Fans streaming out before full-time, boos at the end, and they were still 9 points clear at the top at the time, but it felt bad and it was bad. Bournemouth were excellent. It opened the door for City, who broke down Chelsea in the second half and ran away with it at the Bridge. We have league. At the bottom, Spurs. They weren't terrible. They weren't good. They were a little unlucky. That Mukiele deflected goal. Everyone could see it going in for hours, but no one could do anything about it. They were already in the relegation zone after West Ham beat Wolves 4-0 on Friday night. And then Forest got a crucial point at home to Villa. Some real couldn't hit a barn door stuff from Unai Emery's men in the second half. A morale-boosting win for Liverpool, a morale-sapping defeat for Newcastle too. All manner of excitement in the EFL and in the Fitba. And Barry ran a half marathon. Wild times we're living in. All that plus your questions. And that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Seb Hutchinson, welcome.
Hello, Max.
Hello, Jacob Steinberg.
Hello.
And the hero of the hour, Barry Glendenning. How are you feeling?
I'm in a world of pain, Max. Everything from the waist down hurts. Even the soles of my feet hurt. And it took, I'm not exaggerating, it took me 10 minutes to lever myself out of bed and walk down the stairs this morning.
Sounds like an Arsenal fan.
But
unlike my friend Gavin, whose fault it is I'm in this mess, he did it with me yesterday as well, and he had to climb a crane this morning for work because he forgot to take the day off.
Man alive. Okay, anyway, we'll get to that. More importantly, let's begin at the top of the Premier League. Arsenal 1, Bournemouth 2. Carl on Blue Sky says, is quad bottle a word? Matthew, I've not known the country this united in a long time. Every weekend wanting both North London teams to lose every week for totally different reasons. And Candid says, who could have imagined 2 years ago that Baz would have a more impressive heat map over the weekend than Declan Rice and Moses Caicedo? Well, look, we'll get to Caicedo, but with credit to Bournemouth, and we will get to that, Seb, it is always easy to be wise after the event, right? So maybe that's where this is coming from. But from the moment this game started, it felt like this sort of air of inevitability that Arsenal weren't going to do it.
I'll show wisdom from, I think, maybe match day 11 or 12 when I was on this pod and we said, is it too early? And we were talking about Arsenal. And I said, Arsenal defensively looks strong, but going forward, they've got real problems in the structure of their attacks. And as the season's gone on, that has basically come to the fore. From the moment of the League Cup final was the moment where Man City pinned them in and they had no way of getting out. And I think teams of now, at this point of the season, teams like Bournemouth, who are playing with a sense of freedom, but also they are in the European mix themselves. I mean, we can apply this idea that they're on the beach. They're not on the beach at all. I mean, they literally are. But in the football sense, they're not on the beach. And so they had something to get out of this game for sure. They deserve this win. And that's the scary thing from an Arsenal point of view. You look at it and think, well, can they even win a game towards the back end of this season? I know it sounds crazy, but they look one of the poorer attacks in the top half of the league at the moment, which is incredible to say. And who do we lay that at? Is it an Arteta thing? Is it the actual players that they've bought? Who knows? But watching that game, there wasn't a spell in it where you thought Arsenal were going to win it. Even when they got level, they looked wobbly shortly after that. The second half, the drop-off as well, Bournemouth found it so easy to carve through the midfield. Zubimendi's physical level just didn't seem to be there. Players were running off him. Declan Rice did have that spell where he tried to take the game by the scruff of the neck, the Gerrard style, but it didn't work. Having to turn to the 16-year-old Max Dowman to try and give you something. And he didn't see the ball. He just didn't see the ball. They couldn't structure an attack. Gyökeres snatching at chances. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And I do get the sense with Arsenal at the moment, are they just the Frankie Fredericks of football at the moment? Whereby you think everything seems to be working nicely. They look a well-oiled, well-polished machine. They look the part, but there's just somebody better.
Yeah, but I suppose it's interesting, Jacob, isn't it? We've talked about this before, but shouldn't they be good at attacking? They've got good attackers. They've got a good midfield. They've got a creative midfield. Like they should be good from open play.
They should be, but they don't actually have the creative midfield you would probably want to be on the pitch all the time. I think it can't be underestimated that for a lot of this season, they've not had Odegaard, and now they don't have Saka fit as well. And when they've been at their best in the last couple of years, so much of that play has gone through that link up between Saka and Odegaard down the right. It was very heavily slanted there, and probably teams were starting to work that out a little bit. But when Arsenal were probably at their freest in sort of the early part of the Arteta title charge in the 2024-23, so much of it was going through Odegaard, and this season he's just not there. I mean, he was taken off around the hour mark against Sporting Lisbon last week. Looked like he was struggling physically in that game, and then he's not there on Saturday against Bournemouth. And I think he's just a really big miss for them. Even when he's not been playing well this season, that level that he brings, the ability to take the ball and just sort of keep things ticking over, find passes, thread passes, get through the Bournemouth press. That ability wasn't there, and I think they really do. I think they're really missing him. I think obviously they brought in Eze last summer as an alternative in attacking midfield to Odegaard, but I don't think he's the same kind of player who's going to sort of direct the play, orchestrate things in midfield in the way that Odegaard does. They tried Havertz in that position on Saturday after the goal against Sporting Lisbon. I missed the first half, but I was listening to the commentary on TalkSport, and a lot of it featured Stuart Pearce criticising Havertz's performance, saying he'd be shocked if he wasn't taken off at half time. So I'm assuming that experiment didn't go too well. And then you look at the rest of the attack as well, and Seb mentioned before, did they buy well enough? I mean, ultimately, you're looking at the performances of Gyökeres and Madueke in these games over the last few weeks, and the answer to that is probably, at the moment, despite a few contributions here and there from both of them, no.
Yeah, and Barry, the tension, like the players were tense, the fans were tense. It's sort of this vicious cycle that it sort of feels impossible to get out of. And like, as I said in the intro, like they were still 9 points clear at the end of this game.
Yeah, but it was a dismal performance. And if if it was an uncharacteristically bad performance, you'd say, fair enough, that happens. But this is the latest in quite a long list of poor performances. Even against Sporting, I thought they weren't particularly good. They did win the game, and it was a good result, but I wasn't impressed with them. And the one thing I took from this game, while I don't disagree with much or anything of what Jacob and Seb have said, is that they looked paralysed with fear, hesitation, players taking too many touches on the ball. David Raya was, I think, second highest Arsenal passer. What I think in quick succession, shortly after half time, the ball was played back to him 3 times. What are you doing? Play forward. Play forward like Bournemouth were playing. They couldn't play through Bournemouth's press, and whenever they tried to play long, Victor Gyökeres, he's no John Hartson. He can't trap the ball and hold it up. He can't, spread his arms, chest it down and hold it up. He was very weak, and Mark Senesi just bossed him. And but yeah, they looked paralysed with fear. That fear spreads to the stands, and I don't think anyone, I've said this again and again and again, it's worth saying again, I don't think anyone is helped by Mikel Arteta bouncing around his technical area like a jack in the box, gesticulating furiously and looking like he's having he's like Basil Fawlty thrashing his car with a tree branch. That can't be helpful to anybody.
There's something you don't see that often, but Senesi was able to bring the ball down on his chest from a long ball with Gyökeres really close to him. And then you look at the game against Chelsea, from Manchester City's point of view, first long ball that goes forward, and Haaland just traps it himself and takes it away from Fofana, who's an £80 million defender. So I think, in a nutshell, that's another example from Arsenal's point of view, that relief of pressure. They can't get it from playing long passes either. They are in a real mess.
So the anxiety is a real thing, isn't it, as well? I mean, I think there's a feeling among Premier League managers who go up against him that Arteta is maybe a bit too emotional, and that's feeding into it. And the comments beforehand about bring your lunch, bring your dinner, to the crowd. This whole thing about the 12:30 kickoff potentially being a quiet atmosphere, that kind of, it feels like it's being made into too big a thing. That the whole thing is being built up into this grand event when ultimately they're 9 points clear and they're playing at home to Bournemouth, and ultimately they should win. It shouldn't be. It feels like there's too much fear that's being built up going into the game. We have to make this huge atmosphere, and then the game starts and the team's not really responding. And I think probably fans are sitting there thinking, "Hang on, we've been told to turn up, and the players haven't." But I think also there's an element of the supporters as well, just being so tense for months now, because it's probably because it's been such a long wait since they've won the league, and they thought this was going to be the year, and it still might. But I mean, I've been at games at the Emirates where they've been in a pretty comfortable position. I was there in early December when they looked like they were cruising at the top of the league at that point, and they went 1-0 up against Brentford very early in the game, and then it sort of went into a bit of a lull after around 20 minutes, half an hour, and it turned into a bit of a grind, and you could just feel the fans getting on the players' backs even then, and you're looking at it and thinking, this doesn't feel like the way you should be reacting to your team when you're top of the league. I mean, there's like a lot of fans who watch their team play pretty bad football and lose a lot, and you're sitting there thinking, you're top. Why do you appear to hate your players so much? And it's, the Chelsea home game when they were struggling in that, the howls from the crowd when passes were going out of play were really noticeable, and I just think that atmosphere at the Emirates, I don't think it's helping anyone. But I think also it comes from there's that, you can feel that from the team as well. I mean, I think there's a bit of a turning point which people sort of cottoned onto in around December when they lost to Aston Villa at Villa Park in the last minute, and they're all the players are slumped on the floor. They've thrown themselves on the floor when they concede that last minute goal, and it looks like they've lost the Champions League final. And ultimately, what they've done is they've lost quite a close, good game against a good side in the middle of December, and instead they're acting like it's the end of the world. And actually, ever since then, they've barely had a game that's free of anxiety, especially at home.
Yeah, and I suppose it is desperation, right? You can want something too much, like there's just this air of desperation. I also think, Barry, as well, and it's hard to factor this in because we can't feel what they feel, although you do feel it right now, and that is exhaustion, right? They have played, Bournemouth had a really good break. These guys have played, and actually, they've still got to play Sporting midweek and then City. Like, this is so tough now for them.
They ran more than Bournemouth did, so I don't buy that.
Okay.
They clocked up more mileage. No, I just.
I mean, I suppose. Sorry. That might just be jogging as opposed to sprinting, right? I don't know. Maybe you have how many sprints they did.
No, I don't.
Fine.
I read it somewhere, and I presume it's true. I think it was a reliable source, but I don't think this is anything other than a combination of fear and Arteta playing with the handbrake on again. And I'm really interested to see how he'll approach the game against Manchester City next weekend. I suspect he will set out not to lose it, and it might work, but on the evidence of what I've seen this weekend, Arsenal will get pasting.
Yeah. And so we should credit Bournemouth, right? Because they played really well in this game. Alex Scott, who hasn't been part of Tuchel's plans, has had a brilliant season, took that goal very well.
Yeah, I know, and there's been links with Iraola going to Athletic Club, because he has strong ties with that place. But what impressed me about them was that freedom, and that's why people were applying that idea that they have got nothing to lose. But they are still in the running to be in Europe for the first time, so there is that for the club. And I just thought their players were almost to a man. They were excellent. Jimenez at right back. He showed a boldness that was annoying his manager at times. He sort of was trying to say to him, no, tuck back in, stay back, track yourself back. But he was enjoying himself down that right-hand side. Alex Scott is a player that even Bristol City have always believed. And, I was with Leroy Rosenior at the weekend, and he has strong ties with Bristol City, and he works for the club as well. And he said they always believed that he would be a top player, but injuries obviously have affected him. And he could go on a run here where you just think he has to be part of that England mix as well, because he's a type of player who is that midfielder who can do a bit of everything in that area. And the way he took his goal, again, that composure, the technique, the run, and a word on Krupi. I mean, what a season he is having. You know, I think he's closing in on the record for a teenager scoring goals in a Premier League season. It's an astonishing achievement, but the latest in big achievements from Bournemouth when it comes to players coming to the club.
Yeah, I think how many players they lost in the summer, right? Meanwhile, at Stamford Bridge, then it was all set up. City had to win, and they did. I mean, when they panned to that City fan drinking an empty bottle with an Arsenal logo on it, it did make me want Arsenal to win the league, actually. I was like, this is too much. You know, that's really, I don't know why I found it so annoying. But you were there, Jacob. What did you make of it?
It was a strange first half because you're expecting Manchester City to just come out and immediately make the statement after Arsenal's defeat on Saturday, and instead they were very, very slow to get going. Passes go astray, a lot of misconnections in attack. They couldn't get Haaland into the game. It felt like one of those games where you're going to get through it wondering, oh my God, Haaland's not touched the ball. What's going on with the Manchester City attack? As they after they draw 0-0 somehow with a weakened Chelsea. And Chelsea sort of set up quite well despite missing quite a few key players. They were quite hard to break down in the first half. They set up with deep defence and they played out quite well. They were getting through the press very well. And when they did, Cole Palmer was there quite a lot of the time to pick up the ball in the number 10 position. They had this very clear focus on going down the left and targeting Núñez, and Neto had a few good runs at him on the left, and you get the disallowed goal for Cucurella, which is just probably inches in it for the pass from João Pedro, and City just weren't really doing that much. But at the same time, you kind of always felt that when they do step it up, there's going to be trouble. And the change after half-time was stark. I mean, they just came out, the passing was quicker, more aggressive, more physical than they were in the first half. Didn't take them very long at all to get through that Chelsea defence. And, they scored 3 goals in 17 minutes. And afterwards, Guardiola is asked what the change was at half-time. And he says, not tactics. I just told the guys, basically, at this stage of the season, you have to step up. You have to make the difference and you have to show the mentality. And that's what they did. So he's there afterwards and he's talking about this mentality that Manchester City have. I also think that kind of shows just the value at times of a guy in the dugout who just knows what he's doing and has been there and done it. Because when he says those kind of things, it sounds kind of simple. It sounds kind of simple when he says you have to be more aggressive and you have to play better. But presumably there's the trust from the Manchester City players, a lot of them very experienced, some of them less so when it comes to a title race, to listen to Pep and to respond. And I still feel that that's something in the last few years that Chelsea have slightly underestimated. You know, this data model where there's been this talk that the overall impact of a manager statistically over time is not that important. And there's probably just this unquantifiable hidden 5-10%. You probably can't put any real number on it because it's unquantifiable. But it's there, and it's an invisible magic that someone like Pep Guardiola has, and then you're watching Liam Rossini next to him, who's this bright young coach, but ultimately is at this level a novice. And I just felt that second half kind of summed it up a little bit in the way that the two clubs have gone about this. And one has the proven guy there, and the other one has a guy who may well turn out to be very talented, but at the moment is struggling badly.
Yeah, I had a TV producer once who just said, be better. I didn't find it amazing advice, but, it wasn't Pep Guardiola. You were commentating on this, Seb, as, Cherky was so good in that second half, wasn't he?
I think that second half from Man City was the best half of football I think I've seen from a team this season. Not just in terms of the total control they had over Chelsea for the first 15 minutes of that half. And Ryan Cherky, this is why I slightly don't believe Pep Guardiola when he says he just told them about mentality. There has to be more going on here, because the freedom, the space that Ryan Cherky had on the ball to make things happen, it just made it look so easy. And how can you, in an environment like that, be so far ahead of the opposition? It just boggles my mind. And they've done it. His club has done it routinely, season after season. I know last season they had a wobble, but in the back end of the season, they had moments that were back to that again. And Cherky spoken about the troubles he's had over his time, but when he was a 16-year-old, he was very, very highly rated, and there's not been doubts about his qualities, and it's whether he could have the platform. But City as a whole, they just offered so many different points of attack. If they don't get you with Semenyo's drives, they'll get you with Haaland's finishing. They don't get you with that. It'd be Cherky's craft, and Doku, who just will run at defenders constantly. We talked about Madueke earlier, and I think Doku has that ability to constantly have the confidence that I'm going to run at the defender every time. It doesn't matter. And that confidence caused Chelsea, and they have to deal with it. They have to bring Palmer back to cover that space. It was something that made me say that City now are in a groove that I don't think they're going to be knocked out of. Even the Real Madrid game when they were down to 10, they were so impressive. And they are getting their noses in front in games and then building on it. In the League Cup final, they did it. Against Liverpool in the FA Cup, they did it. And now they did it in the Chelsea game as well.
And actually, it's interesting, Barry, that so much the criticism of Pep is, players are overcoached, and they have to, play in this rigid way. And it's Arsenal that are playing a rigid way. And then you've got Cherky sort of doing his own thing, Semenyo being very direct, Doku as well. I don't know if Pep's made a change or they're just playing really well in a perfectly coached system, and I'm reading too much into that.
I don't know either. Yeah, that used to be a criticism of Pep. Jack Grealish famously being a player who arrived at City as this flamboyant individual with a big box of tricks that Pep confiscated from him and coached the flair out of him. But certainly not seeing this with the likes of Doku and Cherky. Maybe Cherky hasn't been there long enough to have the good coached out of him. I don't know, but they were hugely impressive yesterday. Chelsea had a couple of chances. They never looked like winning the game or taking anything from the game at all. I think City won it comfortably. Should have had a penalty as well, I think, for that Palmer challenge on Jeremy Doku while the score was still 0-0. But who'd be an Arsenal fan these days? I mean, most fans of both clubs must be really tense, but Arsenal fans must be just going through the ringer. I watched this match in the pub yesterday, and I was in the company of 3 Chelsea fans, all of whom wanted Manchester City to win.
It's interesting, isn't it?
What does that tell you?
Well, Ross says, what are us neutrals who don't want City to win anything, that find it hilarious how much Arsenal are making an arse of this? What are we to do? And I think a lot of fans are in that kind of dilemma. I mean, it is worth mentioning Mark Gay's touch and finish. That was elite centre forward play from him. And, buying him and Semenyo has been great. And there will be some people shouting, what about the 115 charges? I mean, it would be useful to find them out before the apocalypse. But, as yet, they're not there. Who wins the league, Jacob, for you from this position?
Manchester City, and I'm not sure at this point it's going to get to the final day.
Oh, okay. You see a real implosion, Seb?
I've just felt City are going to win the league since they went on the run towards the back end of when Villa were winning games, City were also winning games. And you just see enough, we watch enough 90 minutes week in, week out, and you just think when it gets tight, it's about the teams that have got those match-winning players. And I thought Arsenal defensively this season, superb. But at some point, when it gets tight, as we've seen, you can make mistakes at the back. And we've seen it recently. So, yeah, I've not changed my mind. I thought it would be close in the end. But no, I agree with Jacob. I think City will win it before the final game of the season. Incredible to say.
I'm not going to lie. I would piss myself laughing if Arsenal mess this up. But I think they will crawl over the line. Just crawl over the line.
Speaking of crawling over the line, I would dream for Tottenham to do that, but it's a different line, and they may well not, and we'll start with them in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Andrew says, when do we start calling the new Spurs boss Roberto De Spursy? John says, could the day have gone any better for Barry? I think not. Barry, a bad, if not predictable start for De Zerbi. It's 14 games without a win for them in the league now. December the 6th, their last win. Their worst run, I think, in 81 years. And it felt to me like they were simultaneously not good, but quite unlucky. And they don't have time to be either of those things.
They weren't good. They weren't terrible, but they lost again. I think they probably deserved to lose. I thought Sunderland was a better team. I really enjoyed the battle between Brian Brobby and Christian Romero.
Brobby was brilliant. Brobby was brilliant. Like you mentioned, Gyökeres' hold-up play. Brobby's hold-up play was absolutely amazing in this game.
Yeah, he does so much more than score goals, and he's a real handful. Obviously, the battle in question ended with Romero going off with what looks like a serious knee injury, which will probably rule him out for the rest of the summer and the World Cup. So that's unfortunate for him. And Brobby probably should have been sent off. He probably should have been booked for that shove that caused that injury, shoving Romero into Kinski. I was pleased Kinski had a good game for Spurs just after what happened to him. I think it was important he had a good game and he didn't do anything wrong. He played quite well. Nothing he could do about the goal. So I was obviously hoping Sunderland would win this. I wasn't sure how up for it they'd be, but I think teams are invested in sending Tottenham down, even if they've nothing else to play for. I really do. And if you look through the Sunderland team here, Ronaldo, Lefay, Alderete, Granit Xhaka, Brobby, Mukiele all played really well. All new signings. Well, Lefay was on loan there for the second half last season, but he was only officially signed this summer. They're all new signings. They all played well. You had Luke O'Nien there as well from the Sunderland old guard. And what a job Regis Labrie has done. I know we're supposed to be talking about Spurs, but I just think he's done a sensational job this season. Spurs lost again. I've looked at their remaining fixtures. Hard to see where they're going to pick up points, even against Wolves.
Yeah, I agree, Jacob. I still don't, because they've never gone down in my lifetime, I still feel they won't go down. But I have nothing to base that on. They have no confidence. We talk about that anxiety of Arsenal. They've got nothing. They do nothing.
Yeah, that's not a reason to think they won't go down. The fact you've never seen it.
It isn't.
Yeah.
No, but it's philosophically quite a good reason to think something isn't going to happen if you've never seen it happen. Like, I've seen lots of things happen in my life, and I know they happen, and this hasn't happened. But you're right; it is bad reasoning.
Have you seen them play Stevenage before? Have you seen them play Stevenage?
I don't know, but they're not good, Jacob.
No, they're really bad. They are really bad. I mean, they obviously they've not won in the league in 2026, and they just seem to have forgotten what that actually feels like. And they also can't score. Well, they do score some goals, but I think since the turn of the year they've only scored more than once in 2 league games, which suggests a real problem. And obviously they're missing massive players in attack. A whole season without Kulusevski, Maddison, and much of it's been 3 or 4 months now without Kudus as well. Odobert, another player who has shown promise in patches as well. He's gone. I think obviously with Maddison and Kulusevski there, if they had been there for some of these games, it might be different. They just have no replacement for that, and the lack of creativity is really being felt now. And you looked at that front three that started on Sunday. They're all decent players probably in their own right, but as a combination, they're all kind of the same player, and you're looking at it and thinking, well, who's going to make a goal for the other one? They had that small bit of success at Anfield where they played very direct, but in that game Liverpool looked so unready for that approach from Tottenham. And Sunderland, I don't think that was the kind of thing that was going to scare them by playing long, and that lack of creativity now is a real problem. And it's another game where the big creative signing from last summer, signed for what, 50-60 million pounds, Xavi Simons is on the bench. He can't even get into this side at the moment. So the real problems, and when you throw in the Romero injury as well, the lack of goals, combined with now the problems in defence, just makes it look even harder. I do think, though, at the same time, when you look at the fixtures, I do think that they're okay. I think if you could ask for any, then probably those would maybe just about be the ones you would want. They have this potential, obviously, game looming with Chelsea, where that could be the one that sends them down on the penultimate weekend, unless that gets changed by. Although I was listening to some Chelsea fans on the platform at West Brompton, and they're starting to think that they might actually mess that up. So maybe there's hope.
So yeah, they've got Brighton at home, then Wolves away, Villa away, Leeds at home, Chelsea away, Everton at home. What should De Zerbi do, Seb?
Join in the summer?
Go back in time and say, I don't want this job. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe that Spurs went for De Zerbi at this point in time. It just didn't really make sense to me. I felt like it needed somebody who would just come in and just calm them down, just go, the players here surely they're good enough to get more goals than they have got in recent games. Surely. I mean, we're talking about talented players on the surface, but it's just not working. And the interesting thing for me was when Romero started crying, you knew it was because he was going to miss the World Cup. You knew those tears were for Argentina. That as soon as you saw it, you just thought, this is going to be a bad injury. Because he's had injury problems before. He's had multiple suspensions for Spurs. And Van der Ven, the way he was playing, everything, we spoke about Arsenal and their tension. I think there's a tension in the Tottenham team now where they're forgetting how to do simple things. When things go against them, they're getting frustrated. 3 of the back 4 was booked fairly early on in the game. And once that snowball starts rolling, it's really tough to stop it. And it was a bad weekend when it comes to the other results, and that's even before Leeds are playing as well.
Yeah, well, let's talk about West Ham then. Beat Wolves 4-0. Put Spurs in the relegation zone on Friday night. You are West Ham, Jacob. You're alive.
Me or okay, yeah.
Well, you are. Yeah, I mean, you are. Thankfully,
his picture froze there. By the
way, we haven't tried the weekend at Bernie's Football Weekly yet, but there will come a time. But in the meantime, figuratively, it looks rosier after this game.
Well, it's the first time that they've had it in their hands pretty much throughout the run-in. The first time they've been out to the bottom of 3 properly since, I think, November. By the end of the weekend, they've had moments here and there where they've gone out and then been immediately put back in by the end of the weekend. The change is massive, and it probably goes back to these 2 signings in attack that they've made, Pablo and Castellanos, who I still can't really work out if either of them are particularly good. They've probably overpaid for both of them, particularly Pablo, given that he was signed for not very much by his previous club in Portugal, Gil Vicente. But they've both made an impact. They are, unlike the Tottenham players in attack, they are making that impact by partly just running around and being a nuisance and occupying defenders, just being really annoying to play against, particularly in the case of Pablo, who hasn't actually scored yet took a really bad penalty in the shootout against Leeds in the FA Cup quarter-final last weekend. But without ever really looking like he might score, he is contributing to the side. And then Castellanos as well. He's got 5 goals since he turned up. These were probably the most important ones because the others have, they've not been ones that have really made a huge difference to the final score in most cases. But these two really sort of changed the mood in the stadium because it was quite nervous for much of the game. I mean, Wolves turned up and they dominated for about 40 minutes, and it felt like West Ham, because they knew that, because their fixtures are pretty hard from here, it felt like they knew they absolutely had to win this game, that if they didn't, it would just be such a huge blow for them to take, and I'm not sure they would have recovered from it. They were sort of snatching at chances. And when that first goal goes in from Mavropanos, who's another massive change in performances as well from him at the back, still it felt nervous. Wolves hit the post at the start of the second half. So that first Castellanos goal just felt like it lifted all the tension in the stadium. And after that, they just, with Wolves kind of just giving up, they just ran through them. The other huge difference they've had in January was Disasi, who coming in on loan from Chelsea at the back has just shored things up to a defence that previously was comfortably looked like the worst in the division, with particularly Kilman playing there. And he's since coming in, he's just made things much calmer, Disasi. And at Chelsea, he was a player who really struggled with the whole playing out from the back thing. But I think if you just ask him to be a defender, then he's good at that. He can do all the things that a defender traditionally has to do. And he's also just a really good character. And it feels like Nuno, from having had a really difficult start, and around December, January, the mood around the place was really, really bad. There were a lot of unhappy players, and there was quite a lot of disquiet inside the building. Just feels like he's got the spirit in the team now, and goals in the team. Importantly, despite the fixtures, I would now really think that they're going to stay up. And the interesting question as well is, if they don't, what do you do with Nuno? Because if you do go down, he's probably the guy you want to try and get you back up. Probably more the question is going to be, would he want to stay there? Would he start to think, I've got better options than this?
I would say Castellanos is two of the worst hit strikes for football of all time. But you know, it doesn't matter. You need that luck, I guess. So Barry, they've got Palace away, Everton at home, Brentford away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home. I mean, it isn't easy, but you know, that final game against Leeds could be enormous for them.
They are tough assignments, but the thing is, West Ham are showing fight, Leeds are showing fight, Spurs, Forest are showing fight, Spurs are not no fight at all. So just on that alone, you'd have to go for Spurs. But Spurs definitely have easier fixtures. But as I said, I cannot see where Spurs are going to get even a point from their remaining fixtures playing the way they are.
At the City Ground, Forest drew 1-1 with Villa. I mean, apologies for looking at this through a Spurs lens, Seb, but the chances Villa missed in this game were just sort of extraordinary. I mean, Sells made some saves, but that Rodgers miss, you know, I love it when you get to this stage of the season where you're so invested in other teams and you're like utterly furious with Aston Villa. I haven't really bothered about anything they've done all year, and suddenly I'm livid with Morgan Rodgers.
It's because you don't trust your own team, so you're relying on favours.
No,
that's how it works. Yeah, Forest, they were the ones I was most worried about a couple of weeks ago, because even though I felt they were going to stay up for a lot of the season, I was struggling where their goals were going to come from. And Chris Wood's come back, which is great. But yes, I think they would have taken a point before that game. They know that Villa are a side who are well up the league and doing well. Although I think Villa have only scored 3 more goals than Spurs this season, so they've not been great goal scorers, and that probably showed by the chances they missed in the end. Forest now have to look at the games they have, and every weekend's going to feel pivotal, because Forest are still in the Europa League, and they're in a good position to progress in that. You know, if they beat Porto, they're through to the semi-finals, and then that's another game in the fixtures. But then the game after that is Burnley at home, and Burnley at home for any team now feels like the one where you just have to win that game. It's that sort of game. And that's what it was for West Ham on Friday. You have to beat Wolves. That's what, even though we're talking down about Spurs' situation, the running is with West Ham at the moment. Of the 4, they're the ones I'm most confident about staying up right now, because they're hitting form. All the others still, Leeds, Spurs and Forest, are struggling to score goals. And this could be the one where they have those narrow defeats. Is this going to be the difference? And so that point against Villa, I think, was pretty big.
Both those played on Thursday night. Villa had a big win against Bologna away, beating them 3-1. Scored really late on for a crucial third goal. Forest drew 1-1 away at Porto. Their goal was an excellent own goal. Palace won as well in the Conference League. Tonight, the other side in danger. Leeds go to Old Trafford. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday's pod. And that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll do the rest of the Premier League, bit of AFL, bit of Fitba. And that's about it. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Liverpool 2, Fulham 0. This, Barry, felt it was just nice for Liverpool for them to see some good performances. You know, Ungamoa was great. Salah scored a good goal. It felt happy for a change.
Up to a point, Liverpool fans had a protest of sorts. I think they didn't have any banners on the Kop apart from the one that said no to ticket price increases. So they're not happy with the club hierarchy over that. They're not happy with performances. I thought Fulham might get something here, but they didn't. They weren't terrible, but they missed a couple of decent chances. Raul Jimenez, Emile Smith-Rowe. And yeah, so a good win for Liverpool. I think at best it will paper over some gaping fissures. But Ngamoa was definitely his performance was definitely something for the Liverpool fans to savour. I didn't realise quite how young he was. He's only 17. His goal was absolutely brilliant. He played a pivotal part in setting up Salah to score a kind of mirror image inside the other post. But his performance was really good. A much needed win for Liverpool, but it is hardly going to do much to change the mood around Anfield.
Yeah, Man United in that race for the Champions League spot have 55 from 31. Obviously play Leeds tonight. Villa 55 from 32. Liverpool now 52 from 32. Chelsea in 6th, 48 from 32. And then Brentford and Everton both on 47. And Seb, you sort of needed one of these sides to win to maintain their Champions League push, and neither of them did.
It was a slightly annoying result for a neutral, wasn't it, for those classic Saturday matches, because teams like that, if Everton or Brentford had won that game, then they would be above Chelsea right now. And even with Liverpool within range, and then you're dreaming. But the draw, sort of, it just made it a meh result. But what it does too is keep both sides firmly thinking about the season. And for Thiago, I mean, incredible campaign. And you're looking at, because of Haaland's goals, relatively drying up, he's now in a position where the golden boot's in his sights, and that would be some achievement. And of course, if he does pick he'll probably be leading the line for Brazil come the World Cup, and it could be one of those great stories after the way his Brentford career began with that serious injury.
Rayan from Bournemouth both made their Brazil debuts for during the international break in a match against Croatia in Florida, I think.
Yeah, 22 goals, Haaland, 21, Igor Chega. I mean, when it's going for you and one just hits him and goes in, as I'm just watching Solanke and Kolomoani and Richarlison just running around, just let someone hit it and hit you, for goodness sake. There was some brilliant goalkeeping in this game. Kelleher made one amazing double save. Pickford made a couple of brilliant saves as well. Both having brilliant seasons. Newcastle not having a brilliant season, Jacob. I mean, Palace with a late comeback here. But it's the pressure on Eddie Howe is quite interesting. And this idea that if he doesn't end the season well, this could be it for him.
Yeah, it's another game where they've thrown it away. He talked a lot about how he's not telling them to do this, but they are sinking back in games and just trying to defend when they've got the lead. They obviously lost the lead against Sunderland in the previous game, and they did it again here. Without ever Palace seeming to dominate the game, and Newcastle nick the goal at the end of the first half and unable to push on from there, and the pressure in the end becomes too much. And Eddie Howe spoke afterwards about how he wanted the team to go for more, and instead they're just losing control in games, not taking the initiative, and annoyed by the fact that they're not taking even shots on when they have the chance, which he said really annoyed him. And that's just been a lot of the story of the season for Newcastle, where they just seem to lack the ability to see games through and control that. And maybe part of that at the moment comes through not having Bruno Guimaraes, who's been out now for a long time and is such an important player for them. in midfield. Another element that's obviously been a real part of their season is that the two strikers who've come in to replace Alexander Isak simply haven't done it. It's another game where they both start on the bench, Waltemada and Johan Visser, and Osula starts and scores instead, but the two expensive ones are on the bench. And there's been tension at Newcastle in recent transfer windows over how the signings were done, with how much say Eddie Howe would have over things. He's always had quite a lot of power there, and there've been sort of clashes with recruitment staff in the past, particularly Paul Mitchell, who ended up leaving. You could just feel that maybe this is starting to come towards a natural ending. But you've got this other problem for Newcastle where they're talking about potentially needing to sell players as well. They're needing to sell a big player, and there's constant talk of Arsenal looking at Anthony Gordon, Manchester United looking at Sandro Tonali. So it's very odd times at Newcastle. They've not had the season that they would have wanted.
I think you could tell a lot about both teams here from their respective benches. Palace started with Ismaila Sarr, Adam Wharton and Jean-Philippe Mateta on the bench because they were saving them for Europe. Newcastle started with Jacob Ramsey, Voltemada, Wissa and Elanga on the bench because all these expensive signings are not good enough to get in the team. And Newcastle's recruitment last summer has proved disastrous. That's on Eddie Howe, I think. Palace have played 12 games after Conference League matches this season. This is only the third one they've won. But there seems to be a section of Newcastle fans who think that because Eddie Howe won them a trophy, that should give him a lifetime residency at the helm at St. James's Park. And I mean, you don't get rid of him unless you can bring someone else who will be better. But it's not going well for them this season, is it? It's very sad.
No, but
very sad.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, like, he can't control Sven Botman doing that in the 90th minute. I mean, that is mad, isn't it? Even if, it's soft and they're often not given, you don't need to do that. I suppose Palace are interesting, Seb, in that, a while ago, Glasner sort of down tools and was desperately trying to get sacked. And then he's gone, okay, well, I'm here. I might as well try and win a European competition. And, he could, even more cement himself as the most successful Palace manager of all time.
What an incredible story it would be. We're talking about managers winning trophies, Howe and Slot, and then their jobs being under pressure. Glasner could probably win a third title, essentially, because I'm counting the Community Shield, for Crystal Palace, and then just walk away and just be like, yeah, I'm done, thank you very much. I'm going to be a legend here, and they will remember him as one, even though he's had these dodgy moments this season where he's basically tried to be in a position where everything can be under his watch in terms of transfers, ins and outs, but he knows that's not the case at a club like Crystal Palace. So he's earned the right to speak out about this stuff. But you do get remembered for winning things as a manager. This is what sticks with people. It's either that or playing great football. Think of Keegan at Newcastle, couldn't get them over the line in the league, but they still look fondly on that title run because of the way they were playing. So these things are important, and it would be quite the end to his time at Palace, because he will walk away if he wins that competition for sure. What an end that would be. And Mateta's back in the good books as well. Mats Wiefer, we're not going to have much chance to talk about him. And I want to use him as an example why you should never trust AI for any football knowledge or anything you need to know. Because my father-in-law, West Ham season ticket holder, he was looking earlier this season for a central midfielder that who could West Ham get? So he used AI to try and find who would be the best midfield signing for West Ham. And
is he like part of the recruitment? It sounds like how West Ham would do it.
That's a fan, isn't it? That's how they think. I guess they do. And AI returned, you should look at Mats Wiefer. He's a central midfielder for Atletico Madrid who's been brilliant under Diego Simeone and helped them win the La Liga title. And I'll leave it at that. He's been playing right
Perfect.
back most
On
of
the
the
subject of people getting things wrong, sorry, I just noticed in Fabian Hurtzler's press conference on Friday ahead of the Burnley game, he said, we can't take them lightly because Burnley have proved in recent weeks that they can beat anyone in the Premier League. And I said, hold on a minute. So I went and checked. And since the start of November, Burnley have won one Premier League match against Crystal Palace. And that was on the 11th of February. So I actually think Fabian Hurtzler might have been not being sure who his team were playing going into his pre-match press conference, because it was just an extraordinarily wrong thing to say.
Yeah. Categorically, Burnley have proved they can't beat anyone in the Premier League, can't they? In the EFL, Ipswich won the East Anglian derby at Carrow Road, 2 points clear of Millwall and have 2 games in hand. So they're in a great spot to join Coventry, who are basically up. I think they need 1 point for maths. They only drew 0-0 at home to Sheffield Wednesday. Terrible week for Wrexham. Lost 2 in a row, 4-point gap between them and Hull, who are in 6th. So it's Millwall, Borough, Saints and Hull in the playoff spots. Terrible weekend for Leicester. They lost while Oxford and Portsmouth both won. So they are on 41 points in 23rd. Oxford have 44, Portsmouth 45, West Brom 46, Blackburn 48, Charlton 49. In League One, great for Cardiff, who beat 4th place Bolton 2-0. 3rd place Bradford also lost to Stevenage. So Cardiff are basically up. That win for Stevenage, huge for them. They look set for the playoffs along with Stockport, Bolton and Bradford. In the Devon derby, Exeter conceded a 90th minute equaliser at Plymouth, so that could really cost them. You could feasibly be 12th in League One and still get relegated. Unlikely. Barnsley would have to have a terrible time. But Rotherham, Northampton and Port Vale basically down. And then it is pick one from as many as you like. Enormous weekend in League Two. The top 4 played each other. Leaders Bromley lost 2-1 at MK Dons. Cambridge leapfrogged Notts County after hammering them 4-0. So we're back into the automatics. A bun fight for the last playoff spot and a bit of daylight at the bottom now. Barrow and Harrogate both on 33, and then a 4-point gap between them and Newport, Crawley and Tranmere on 37. In Fitba, all 3 teams won, but Hearts left it very late for their victory. Rangers were 2-0 down at Falkirk, but won 6-3 in the end. Celtic won as well. So it's as you were. Hearts on 70, Rangers 69, Celtic 67. And in running, we should finish the pod with running. A big congratulations to producer Joel, who ran a sub 3-hour Milan marathon at the weekend. So well done to him. And that'll do pretty much for today. I'm only kidding, Barry. We've had lots of messages. But well done to Joel. Sub 3 is pretty impressive.
Yes, he's well chuffed with that. I think it's his first sub 3.
Yeah. John says, Dear Football Weekly team, as I continue my recovery from a nasty bout of anorexia nervosa, any discussion of running and personal best, etc., can be extremely triggering. I can't tell you how refreshing it's been to listen to Barry's total disdain for the whole concept of what he's put his body through these last few months. Barry, your total refusal to turn into a pretentious twat, wanging on about how great it feels to go for a run, has bordered on the heroic. Great pod. Keep up the good work, says John. Johnny says, today I ran the London Landmarks half marathon for the incredible charity Tommy's. I had a secret dream of meeting the one and only Barry Glendenning. I've been a listener to Football Weekly for over 10 years. I knew this would be my best chance, although not in his natural habitat. I feared the odds were not in my favour with 20,000 people running. But when a start notification pinged just 20 minutes before my start time that Barry was underway, I had the hope of hunting him down. Wow. The first 7K of the run flew by with my eyes not fixed on the numerous landmarks, but scanning the sea of runners in the opposite direction for Barry's face. At last, I spotted him, and following another few Ks, I caught him, starstruck and in awe. I very much bottled, theme of the weekend, the opportunity, giving him a thumbs up and telling him he was an inspiration. The rest of the race dragged, following that high, and left me with a distinct hollow feeling of regret at my encounter. So I did what any loyal listener would do, and I waited around at the finish line in the hopes for a second meeting. Swarms of finishers passed me with no sign until there he was, riding fairly low off that runner's high. I waited for him and introduced myself with the line, long-time listener, first-time stalker. My conversation with Barry was everything I wanted it, as we shared a walk to the nearest tube station and for him to find a quiet place to talk with Max and Charlie on the radio. The money raised by Barry and the surrounding listener family is nothing short of incredible. He deserves immense credit. I offered him the choice of the London Marathon, and he promptly replied with, fuck that. Good on you, Baz. Photo attached. Johnny, long-suffering Villa fan. You did it, Barry. Congratulations.
Yeah, I was chatting to Johnny very soon after the finish, and I had my arm around his shoulders for the selfie, and then became apparent that all 17 stone of me was just leaning on him, and he was more or less propping me up. So it was nice to meet him. Thank you to the few Football Weekly fans who recognised me and cheered me on. It was one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life. And if anyone would like to buy a pair of second-hand Asics with one careful owner about 200 miles on the clock, we can sort something out. But thanks to you and Charlie as well for... I haven't heard it, but I know you did a telethon on the radio yesterday, and you and the TalkSport listeners raised, I think, about 20 grand while I was on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm never doing that again. It was hideous. Just a really horrible thing to do. But
I mean,
an interesting experience.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to you. Like, I'm simultaneously amazed you've done it because it's a half marathon, and I've never seen you run a step in your life. But I know you're such a stubborn bastard that once you said you'd do it. And once the money started getting big, you were like, okay. But yeah, like the Football Weekly audience have been amazing. And then on the radio, you'd raise 65 grand. So me and Charlie said, come on, let's get to 70 by the end of the show. And we'd raise 70 grand in 15 minutes. And the total now is £87,008 for Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is staggering. And
including gift aid, it's over 100 grand.
Unbelievable.
I'm just glad it's over, this exercise in woke virtue signalling and self-aggrandizement. I don't like to talk up my achievements because I think I'm a quite humble man, but I think this puts me in the holy trinity of Irish humanitarians. That is Bono, Bob Geldof, and Barry Glendenning.
How were the righteous pints, Baz?
I tell you, they went down like hemlock. I was just shattered and empty, and I didn't enjoy them. I had a few. I forced a few down because I'm a trooper, but I didn't get hammered or anything. But yeah, thanks to everyone, and can we please never speak of it again?
All right. Well, look, well done, Barry. I am proud of you, and I didn't mean to patronise you, but I quite like doing that. But no, it's an absolutely amazing achievement, and I think you will have inspired a lot of sedentary people to actually start running. And I know you walk a lot, but it's unbelievable. So well done to you, and thanks everybody for your donations. Greatly appreciated.